Hey, Peter.
Hey.
How's your coding?
It's not great.
How's your recoding?
Recoding, not great. My recorder playing is pretty good, though.
Your recorder? We're going to decode that.
All right.
I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music advice coming at you.
We're having a real morning
We're having a good time here. I've already given you a look that you gave back that I think you've never seen me give. You know, it's kind of like, remember the game of telephone when you're passing along? So I gave a look. I'm going to try to approximate your version of me giving it to you.
Okay, do it. Go ahead. That's what you look like. That's exactly.
I never look like that.
Have you ever heard of the term triggered?
Triggered. You triggered me.
You looked triggered. Like I triggered something in you that we like to mess around with the intros and we love to.
By mess around, we mean by screw them up.
We love to give Caleb a bunch of options.
Don't use any of those.
Don't use any of those for the intros to the podcast. And I did
cold
one
open, we call them,
where it really messed with you a little bit. And you gave me a look. And
we're not even going to talk about why, because it might trigger me again.
Anyway, no.
But it brought out this look of you of humor that I've seen it with you before.
I know,
but not. So that was worth it. That was worth it.
Yeah.
Folks listening might be like, "Is this worth listening to all these inside jokes?" We're going to try to make that up for you today by decoding.
We're decoding an amazing solo from McCoy Tyner. But part of why I think that your look triggered my laughter is, could you put my screen up on so the people on YouTube can see what I'm looking at? So I'm looking across the screen straight at Peter's face. Peter made this exact face.
Oh, did I?
At me.
Well, I wasn't seeing that.
This. Yeah, he doesn't see this, but it was like Coltrane and Peter just making this squinting, like,
for different
what
reasons.
Are you talking about face for different reasons. So.
Well, and actually, as we were getting re-familiar with this great video, this might still be at the point where Coltrane and, first of all, big shout out to the John Coltrane Quartet, of course, but big shout out to
Raise the Roof.
Raise the Roof for JCQ.
Wow.
No, but I mean, big shout out to YouTube and just the times we're living in. The fact that, like, we were just talking about McCoy Tyner and how we wanted to delve into something that was maybe a little bit lesser known, although it's a YouTube video with 250,000 views, so it has been seen. But what a great time we live in where we can pull up this genius stuff.
Yeah.
There's certainly a dark side. There's a lot of horrible things that you can pull up.
A lot of terrible stuff.
But let's celebrate greatness.
If you wanted to see live footage of the John Coltrane Quartet, you would have to drive to a Borders and hope that they had those Ralph Gleason Jazz Casual series.
Right. At
on
great
video
expense.
cassette.
That's right.
For like $30 per tape.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And now you can just search
And then
it.
you had to make sure the tracking was correct on your VCR.
Yeah.
Remember when the tracking got off?
That was weird.
The young folks now actually go to great lengths in their video editing to simulate bad tracking.
Tracking filters, that do bad tracking. Yeah,
that's hilarious.
So we're listening to this live version of My Favorite Things from a live performance in Belgium from 1965. And it's the classic John Coltrane Quartet. Obviously, Train is on soprano, saxophone. McCoy Tyner is playing piano. We're going to be focusing mostly on McCoy's solo, which is long and beautiful. And Elvin Jones, Jimmy Garrison round out the rhythm section, of course. And this is, some of the comments in this are incredible in and of itself. And one commenter says that this is perhaps, in their opinion, the greatest jazz piano solo of all time.
Right.
And
it's the GOAT, he's saying.
We're going to listen to it, and that's a bold claim, first of all.
Yeah.
I don't actually,
and it's a ridiculous claim.
It is. There's no.
It might be right. It's just ridiculous to come from that mindset. I think that's why we're focusing on it first.
Like there's one of the best. Like you can quantify.
This is the number one. But it is fun to go through. What's cool about this solo is, or like listening to these types of solos, where there's quite a few versions live, and then of course studio of this, and this would be John Coltrane Quartet playing My Favorite Thing. So over several years, there's different examples of them. But to see the kind of commonality between it, I think for McCoy, you can really get a great sense of his concept and how it was really fully versed at this point for sure. But like the variations, it's almost like variations on a theme between different solos. We got a chance to talk with the maestro, Ron Carter, about this a little bit over the specific tune Autumn Leaves, and when he was playing with the Miles Davis Quintet, not in the early 60s, and the different versions. And, he had such clarity on how things would sort of evolve from night to night over the same tune. And, what a great thing for us, certainly to be able to hear from the masters talking about this, but to be able to also hear actual versions of this from live concert footage, and to be able to make some kind of informed, I would say, analysis of things that, say, McCoy Tyner always did over this tune. That's what's kind of interesting to me. Like, there's what happens in the moment, of course, that's amazing on that particular night, something that was in the water, something that was in the air that day, but kind of like what his concept was in approaching this, playing with Elvin Jones, playing with Jimmy Garrison, playing with Coltrane from a piano standpoint. So
yeah, and so this is from 1965. So I was just looking up. This is such an iconic song now, even just the original version from the film. But it's easy to forget that. So Coltrane recorded this in 1960. It was released in 1961 on the album My Favorite Things.
Yeah.
It was published in 1959. Wow. So like that's how new this song was. It would be like, so now at this point,
was this from the Julie Andrews?
Yeah. From The Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. Right.
And so it should be noted that would be like us. I mean,
covering Taylor Swift. No, that's 10
years
would be
ago.
10.
Yeah, I was going to say Hamilton, but that would be older than
Bad
what
Bunny.
This was.
Bad Bunny.
It would be like Bad Bunny or what's a huge hit Broadway thing that's just 2 or 3 years old. It'd be like
Cats.
Cats. It would be like doing Memories. It would be like us covering.
If this was 1984,
2023, yeah. No, but it is so it was at this time still such a fresh song, and
that's crazy. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's an important kind of perspective to think about. So
modern music,
1960 to 1965, they're playing the song. It still was just the movie's just out. It's
still really in the zeitgeist. But what's so cool is they took this Broadway style song, this musical song from a musical film, and they turned it into this modal masterpiece, right? Into this one chord, incredible tension and release, and nobody's better than this particular band at that one thing. No, I don't think there's a better band at taking one chord or 2 or 3 chords and running it through tension and release than these 4 human beings at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so one thing to just note about McCoy's, like, you can hear this on the recordings, but getting a chance to see this, and I was just thinking back to the many times I got to see Mr. Tyner live, and that is the finesse, kind of combination of finesse and force with which he plays, these fifths. This is such an iconic thing that he didn't create.
Gets some height.
But I mean, there's some height, like there's this agility, there's the finesse, but there's also like it's never banging. And I remember used to like trying to play like McCoy because I love that sound, and it would just come out like kind of a sloppy banging mess.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at what his technique is and like how he forms those shapes and then how he attacks the piano, but also brings out the sound.
Always big muscles. It's always with the big muscles. You have to use the larger muscles. You have to use the muscles in your arm, your shoulder, even in your torso.
Yes.
It gets such a better sound than trying to just use all fingers to like force your way to it.
Right. And so like he's coming from, it kind of, it really increases the degree of difficulty is the only thing with being in terms of accuracy. So like you kind of see how focused in he is, and you have to be in order to make it accurate when you're coming up from higher and stuff. But it's so cool. And this angle is just incredible.
Love this angle.
And I love like he's hitting, so I mean there's all these great variations on that E Dorian, but he's always willing to leave that and go into that Phrygian, that sharp 9, even from the very beginning.
Yep.
And he's already hinting there. so far he's really, and this is interesting because a lot of other versions I've heard of this, McCoy will go into this later on in the solo. Yeah. It's not even really. Is that? Yeah, I guess that's Phrygian, right? I should know that. Right. So it's all C major diatonic, but like the little places that he's leaning into altering from that are, major third. He's doing that. Like a lot of times to go into this later.
Adding that major third is actually, part of the tune, because that tune goes between E minor and E major.
Right, exactly.
E major on the bridge. Which
right,
is
even when they're going
cool.
through the form. Of course, here they're just vamping over that E. And he really set that up, both with that, which kind of brings it more back to the,
Is this the origin of an E burnout?
Of what? Yeah,
burnout?
It really is. Yeah. And they always talk about, for sure, Herbie, Miles Davis Quintet, Ron Carter, Tony Williams. There's a lot of elements in that, especially you get into the plug nickel and stuff. But I mean, really from a one chord, how can you play around with the harmony, sit in an area, move to another? It's here. Every single floor. Great 16th notes. That specific tension that he knows he can put in there. Like, how long do you want to extend it?
Every time.
And there, so...
Yeah, that moment there. That's drawing the rest of the band in. Like giving them something.
It's a trigger, kind of, right?
It's a trigger, like, you guys take this for a minute.
Right.
Start spinning it somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it was really built up not only rhythmically, but harmonically in terms of what he did so much, with that flat six, with that C major, and so now he's like, and then he's also going up to the major.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that's been there, boom, 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 and then you're sitting there, and then that becomes the new tension. That started out as being the tension, because really, that's a different tune. But I mean, it's like that's sort of the home base, the Dorian sort of sound. So anything that leaves
he hasn't really gone into Dorian quite yet, though.
No, he did a little at the very beginning before he started soloing.
He found the Phrygian, and now he's finding that sort of melodic minor tension.
Yeah,
it's very cool. And just a little bit on the rhythm of his left hand has been pretty consistently dotted quarter notes.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's so I feel like that's so driven by Elvin. You know what I mean?
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Totally. And then like when McCoy goes into that more with the left hand or more demonstrative or going down to those more often, it kind of frees up Elvin them to fill in between and then to come back and rejoin with it.
It really turns 3/4 more into like a 12/8 thing where, the triplet is it kind of has that lilt to it as opposed to just like
right. There's something corny and something
is that what you're saying? Something that potentially corny and makes it super heavy. And then all of those little slides that he's doing there is taking like dominant chords and moving them around in half steps or whole steps even.
Yep.
That kind of vibe.
Yeah, and I mean that it later on.
We'll get there.
I'm saying that tune that he wrote, he like that's just such a part of his concept about how you can move things around.
That whole step movement.
Yes.
Yeah. Elvin Jones, too, by the way. Steaming.
all straight dotted quarters. And then breaking it up like Elvin does between the tom and the snare. And then pulling back, loosening it up. The dynamic. I mean, it's just such a balance with the whole rhythm section.
Also, really, it's a great lesson too. And like, he's not. There's a lot happening, but he's not overplaying. There's not a lot of like 16-note runs or big long runs. Like this is going to be a long solo. It already is, over 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and he's letting it come to him though. He's not trying to make things happen. It's kind of just like writing this groove out and seeing what happens. And that's the way to go on these big open things. It's not to try to force all of this down your audience's throat, but just let the music come to you.
Right.
You know?
And I mean, there's such a patience in the way he's playing, even though he did. It's such an interesting thing because he when he did play a bunch of 16th-note rounds, it was at the beginning of the solo, actually, which is interesting. So it's like, don't be stuck in thinking, oh, I have to slowly build it up, and then start playing fast, and then play some crazy tension, and then end it, because you'll lose out on the chance of the music coming to you. He's telling a whole epic story in this solo. Well, and it's interesting because you hear the way these live versions of this tune, they're different. Sometimes it's like, Train is playing this epic solo, and McCoy will come in and do something shorter. It's all part of a balanced approach to the entire tune.
I wonder, have you ever been on the road and you get kind of a not great piano at one of these theaters or whatever?
Right.
And you're like, well, it's not going to be my night for speed because this thing is like a brick.
Right. Right.
It could be one of those situations. You're like, I'm just gonna let this.
I'm just gonna lay in.
Yeah.
But I mean, too, what he's McCoy Tyner's such a lyrical player, so much harmonic imagination. But then when you talk about just sort of the intelligence of constructing a solo, a lot of that is just understanding what Elvin Jones and Jimmy Garrison bring to the table and playing things that invite that to make him sound great, to make the whole thing sound great. It's never, you can't decouple these different elements, but never underestimate just the supreme musicianship of a McCoy Tyner to be able to like invite all these different elements in, because we think, oh, it's Elvin Jones, of course you're going to sound great with him. It's like, no, that it's actually harder to play, especially if you're not a great player, with an Elvin Jones. You know what I mean? Like, because you got to be on your A game, which obviously McCoy is, but you got to bring your A game mentality to be able for all that greatness to come in. And this whole part, like when he's hitting just measure after measure of those dotted quarter notes, and like just listen to what Elvin's doing.
Big old E-bombs too, like every 2 or 3 bars.
But it's like the drummer's just playing that with you. You can't just sit on that. You know what I mean? Like he's playing stuff to invite Elvin to play all around that, and then when Elvin comes back to it, he starts breaking it up towards the end.
Totally.
A lot of cool, subtle things that really add up to an exciting thing. You can't necessarily tell from the audience. They look a little bit placid in there, but who knows what's happening in Belgium.
They've only had a couple of years of this sound. So they're probably they're in Belgium, so they might not even had that. Maybe the first time they're hearing something like this.
I guarantee that is not Jimmy Garrison's bass, and he probably did not have a lot of time on it. Major. But he's still giving it that sus4 sound on it. Give it still a little bit of tension with it.
This whole solo, this piano is just a big drum set, isn't it? I mean, this is a big pitched drum.
So much great riffing too.
Maybe it's not a brick.
Well, McCoy is great at playing in 2 different keys at the same time. Like he's left hand staying that, but then he's leaving that.
I know.
Now he's leaving the left hand too. Left hand and right hand decoupling. That's the bell of the cymbal he's playing up there, right?
It's like every 4 bars he drops one of those E-bombs.
E flat over E major. Man, there's like the independence of what's going on between the drums and between the two hands of the piano and the limbs and the hands of Elton John.
Yeah, what is that?
That's that sus4.
Going up in full step here?
Yeah.
That's D sharp. F is coming next. G.
Yeah. I've never heard it extended this one. Back down.
D flat. D flat.
Like sus, right?
What's going on, man? What is happening? Ay, ay, ay. That's like a B sus,
Yeah.
which is the 5.
You know it's gonna go. Woo. Major. So great. The F, I mean, it's just like way.
Pretty much, is that pretty much
That
8 minutes straight of just dotted quarter notes in the left hand?
Yeah. That one wave might have been that George Clooney one that put him under. Remember in the movie? They had a big one there. They made it out though. Man, when you set up that rhythm one way,
do it
man,
different.
you change it.
Exactly.
You don't have to do a lot. And these little mini bombs he's dropping now, Elton. That's the cue of the form.
There you go.
Great stuff, great stuff. Did we decode that?
I need to go for a walk around the block, man.
Man, it's such a what a gift that this music is, but to be able to get inside of it and see, like, when you have a relatively simple form,
Yeah.
you know, lesser players look at it, and it's nothing wrong. We've all gone through this. It's like you panic because you're like, oh, I don't have any changes to go through, even though there are some. But they've got these extended, vamps, right? There's E minor and there's E major. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then there's the cue to go to the bridge. Of course, there's a lot of different harmonic or several different harmonic areas that they go through and that they would have at their disposal. This version, I think, is the most that I've heard in terms of just going up anywhere, potentially. But to great players and great artists, I think the art of possibilities, right?
Totally.
Like, you're just sitting on one vamp, that can be anything.
It could be anything.
But that doesn't mean it has to be everything all
It's
the time.
actually-
There's a reason for it.
You think, oh, it's just one or two chords, it must be easy, but it really takes a lot of training in functional harmony. You know, McCoy is a functional harmony master.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
when you hear like with Johnny Hartman and the Ballads album.
Yeah, it's not really like a randomness there.
No.
That if you drop the needle in the middle of this, you'd be like, wait, what's going on?
And it's still why, when we learn how to improvise, especially in this realm, you start with things like bebop and swing and stuff that has like a lot, and even the real book or jazz standards or whatever. You start with things that have real easy functional harmony, so that you can understand that those
gives
principles.
You something to wrap your hands around.
Something to wrap your hands around, and then you go to sort of modal music, which is more difficult because you have to. You have more freedom, more possibilities.
With great freedom comes
great responsibility, right?
Boom.
You've gotta know how to handle all that.
Yeah.
What can happen is if people just play one chord, and then don't know what to do with it.
Right.
As evidenced here, McCoy's not playing one chord.
No.
It's one chord, but it's whatever you want.
Right.
And you have to learn how to build that tension. For me, rhythmically, that was incredible.
Right.
Just the entire.
Yeah, leaning so 80-90% on that one rhythm.
All that stuff, incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Well, thank you, McCoy Tyner. Thank you, Elvin Jones. Thank you, Jimmy Garrison.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, John Coltrane. Thanks, Adam Manis.
Yeah.
Till next time.
You'll hear it.